Shocking reason Europeans devoured mummies for centuries, you won't believe what happened. The air turned icy as the ancient sepulchres whispered secrets of deep, dark histories. Shadows danced on the crumbling walls, flickering like anxious spirits in the candlelight. For centuries, a bizarre truth lay beneath the surface of European fascination with mummies, a truth shrouded in mystery and delighting the darkest corners of human curiosity. Picture this, a generation of Europeans, robed in elegance yet pierced by bizarre hunger, indulging in a feast that sent shivers down the spine of society. They consumed the remnants of those long gone, their hearts beating wildly as they devoured pieces of preserved flesh buried beneath the sands of time, as rumors of miraculous powers swirled in the air, elixirs of eternal life and healing magic, spirits of traders and explorers grew bold. They scoured the tombs of ancient Egypt, plundering treasures wrapped in linen and guarded by curses. Europeans from every class turned their eyes to the exotic, reveling in tales of resurrection and rejuvenation. The wealthy would throw decadently grisly dinners where the centerpiece was not a roast but a mysterious jar, an ancient pot filled with the ground remains of mummies. Picture people gathered around, eyes wide, hearts racing with apprehension, as cutlery clinked against porcelain, stirring the air thick with tension and the smell of incense. But what truly kept them coming back for more? Did they believe they might gain special powers? Or was it the thrill of the hunt, seeking a piece of the macabre? Closer and closer the truth came, but just as you think you grasp it, shadows flitted by, cloaking everything in uncertainty. The dark conspiracy, the whispers of instability, made every bite treacherous. You couldn't stop there, it was a journey into the eerie unknown. What crimes were committed beneath the facade of enlightenment? What unfathomable bargains were struck for a mere handful of dust? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The night darkened like a shroud being pulled tighter, every breath filled with raw anticipation. Was it greed or desperation that led those affluent diners to pursue more than just sustenance? A chill ran through the crowd. Mysterious incidents in the shadows hinted that perhaps there was much more at stake, a hidden alliance of necromancers believed to be pulling the strings. Whispers of dark rituals spiraled through the air like smoke. Could someone, perhaps, have lifted the veil between the living and the dead? A question lingered as the dining hall grew silent, eyes darting nervously. Was it only a taste of forbidden flesh they craved, or was it their very souls that they were bartering away? The silence in the dining hall thickened, pregnant with dread. Soon, an unsettling noise broke through, a low chant rising from the shadows, a chorus of hushed, guttural voices weaving a spell as chilling as the contents of those jars. Every head turned, wide eyes searching the dark corners for the source. The flickering candlelight cast eerie shapes that writhed like phantoms, anticipation buzzed in the air like electricity. Suddenly, a figure stepped into the light. Clad in tattered robes that seemed to flow like smoke, he emanated an otherworldly aura. His face was half hidden by a hood, but the glint of bone jewelry peeked through, glimmering ominously. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Was he a priest of the old gods or a mere charlatan? Whispers fanned out, panic lapping at the edges of reason as diners exchanged uneasy glances. With a wave of his hand, the table shivered. The jars, once mere centerpieces of morbid curiosity, began to tremble, releasing a scent so sour and decayed that it clawed at throats, evoking involuntary retches. People scrambled back, chairs skidding across the stone floors. A woman near the front fainted, collapsing like a marionette with its strings cut, her eyes rolling back as whispers of magic surrounded the hall like a storm about to break. Who dares awaken the spirits of the damned? The voice reverberated, echoing off the ancient walls. The man's eyes glowed with a bizarre intensity, fixing each guest with a gaze that felt almost too intimate, as though he peered directly into their very souls. The murmurs intensified, chaos boiling just beneath the surface. What had they stumbled into? Amidst the fear, a young man stood defiantly, fists clenched. "What do you want?" he challenged, his voice breaking but his spirit unyielding. The others looked at him wide-eyed, hopeful but uncertain. This was not just a dinner anymore, they were caught in a ritual thick with foreboding. The figure stepped closer, his lips curling into a knowing smile. "What I want is simple: to share a gift. But it comes with a price." He held up one of the jars, its contents swirling like a dark storm, a blend of ash and bone, remnants of lives once lived. "Taste it, and you shall return to the realm of the living, armed with powers unfathomable. But beware, each bite is a pact with the shadows. Your soul shall entwine with the lost souls of ancient Egypt." Horrified gasps echoed through the dining hall. Could it be true? Could these diminutive portions grant them power? Excitement mingled with terror, a tug-of-war played out in every heart. Would they sacrifice their conscience for forbidden magic, or would they resist, clinging to the fleeting comfort of life as they knew it? But before they could react, the candles flickered back to life, illuminating the faces of the diners twisted in fear and greed. A choice loomed above them, heavy and looming, the very fabric of their humanity balanced on the edge of a knife. Just then, a desperate voice shouted from the back, "Don't listen to him. It's a trap." Silence fell once more, thick and heavy, as tension engulfed the hall. Just like that, the flickering gem of possibilities had sparked the whispers of danger all over again. Everyone was about to learn the cost of curiosity, the line between hunger and horror soon to be blurred. What would their choice reveal? And who really held all the cards in this deadly game of shadows? The answers were buried deep, waiting to surface as the banquet sank ever further into madness. The sphere of tension held its breath, caught in the web of indecision. Faces turned ghostly pale as if a shroud of despair descended upon them. The voice from the back, desperate and raw, was swallowed by the silence. The young man who called out stood firm, eyes glistening with determination yet clouded with doubt. He glanced around at the thrumming hearts of the people, each one a fragile thread hanging by a whisper. "What is it going to be?" His voice trembled, a stark contrast to the ancient man's unyielding presence. "Are we really going to let this monster dictate our fate?" Growing anxiety twisted through the air, thick as winter fog. The man in tattered robes smirked, sharp teeth peeking through. "The gift I offer is freedom from your mundane existence, my friend. Not many get a chance to choose their destiny. You know what they say, only the bold taste the flesh of legends." He shifted, casting a glance over the now frightened diners, a predatory glint in his eyes. The whispers turned into a murmur of intrigue, though fear still clung like a shadow. People exchanged uneasy glances, weighing the risks of glory against the certainty of their own demise. The aroma from the jar clung to the back of their throats, an intoxicating blend of rot and seduction that promised power. "Is it worth it?" a woman croaked, eyes darting to the door as if salvation lay beyond those heavy wooden frames. "Trading our souls for a taste of fa desire is a dangerous game," the figure interjected sharply, casting a dark glare. "Power lies in the hands of those who dare grasp it. But beware, not one soul has returned unchanged from this banquet of shadows." Sweat beaded on foreheads, breaths became shallow. With a heavy heart, a middle-aged man sprang from his seat, suddenly spry. "I want to be part of this madness," he shouted defiantly. "It's a trick. Each jar a vessel of destruction." Anger radiated from him like heat, urging others to consider again. Some nodded, doubt creeping in like an unwelcome visitor, but then, the atmosphere shifted. Hesitance transformed into hunger. A young woman, palms trembling but eyes wild with greed, edged closer. "I want to feel it. I want the power," she whispered, almost to herself, but loud enough to ignite a spark among the gathering crowd. "Join the brave," the man in robes beckoned softly, voice dripping like honey mixed with poison. "Each taste awaits you, a promise of greatness. You shall not walk alone, embrace the kinship of souls who have tasted. You'll never experience fear again, only revelry in power over the very fabric of life. Another figure slowly rose, joining the woman, a sense of thrill igniting their faces, as they stared at the swirling contents of the jars, a concatenation of torment and dreams. A ripple of agreement echoed through the hall, the haunting temptation flickering like the failing candles. The young man, heart racing, yelled, "Stop! You're being lured into a trap." But it felt like shouting into a tempest. He pulled away from his own conviction, the urgency to save his companions battling against their growing excitement. "Your end is near, but a new beginning awaits." The robed figure crooned, and slowly, people began to move closer, not just drawn to the jars but to the promise of change, a chance to transform their very existence. The air crackled with charged whispers, half-formed thoughts of rebellion mingled with yearning. In that mesmerizing moment, the large door at the back creaked open, and a rush of icy wind swept into the room, snuffing some candles and casting the hall into chaos. Is this true madness, or the beginning of a journey into darkness? All eyes whipped toward the door, the sudden chill seeming to steal the very breath from their lungs. What or who had just entered? And would their indecision turn toward destruction in the split second that followed? The door swung open wider, revealing a figure cloaked in darkness, their face shrouded beneath a tattered hood. The flickering candlelight danced across the edges of their presence, momentarily concealing their countenance. It was a moment frozen in time, fear clung tighter in the air, a palpable tension coiling around every heart. The room held its breath, unable to utter a sound, just as the roar of a coming storm holds its stillness before the fury unleashes. The robed man's smirk faltered, his confidence cracking under the unyielding gaze of this newcomer. No longer was he the only harbinger of dread and intrigue. "What have you brought?" the ancient man asked, his voice laced with a mix of curiosity and challenge. The figure stepped forward, revealing a face marked with age yet vibrant with an otherworldly glow. Eyes glimmered like twin onyx gems, and they fixed their piercing stare on the crowd, as if reading each soul's deepest fears and desires. Whispers cascaded, filling the air with uncertain intrigue. "Do you crave power?" the newcomer asked, their voice echoing like a soft chime, yet holding the weight of ages. "Or do you seek salvation from your mundane lives?" There was a rhythm to their words, they felt like a melody that promised something profound. The woman who had stepped closer, now trembling with anticipation, raised an arm. "We want more," she cried out, her voice raw and desperate. "We want to feel alive. But at what cost?" The young man shot back, heart thumping like a drum in his chest. "You'll pay with your very essence. Don't you see?" The hooded figure's lips curled into a smile, revealing a row of teeth that seemed just as sharp as the man in tattered robes. "Essence is just a currency of exchange, dear boy. Wouldn't you spend it to transform?" they said, gesturing toward the jars filled with swirling shadows and sparks of light. As the crowd began to shift closer, eyes ignited by this sinister possibility, the robed man stepped back, sensing his grip on their souls slipping away. A shift had occurred. The newcomer's presence crackled through the air, igniting a frenzy. "Join us," called an older woman by the jars, eyes wide with feverish light, her voice lifted with the thrill of discovery. "The past can be rewritten. Just imagine no more fears." The young man felt sweat pooling at the nape of his neck, dread spreading like fire through his veins. Images of chaos flashed in his mind, cravings twisting souls and awakening nightmares. "You don't know what you're inviting," he shouted, but it felt like casting a stone into a roaring river. The figure advanced, their presence overwhelming. "It is our nature to desire, to seek, to taste life in all its forms even when darkened. You yearn for a feast of legends." The man in tattered robes, threatened, hissed, "You'll take nothing from them." But he grew visibly uneasy, shifting his weight as uncertainty ricocheted between the two figures. With that, an eruption of energy pulsated through the gathering. A clash of wills ignited, the frantic pleas and wild longings swirling into a whirlpool of madness. The crowd, once uncertain, now swayed to the rhythm of temptation, hearts racing with the possibilities of power, of change. Suddenly, a chilling shadow flickered by the doorway. Was it an illusion, or something far more sinister? The revelry of indecision hung in the balance, leaving questions murky in the chaos. Would they embrace destruction or find their way back to the light? And what lay hidden in the shadows that had yet to be revealed? The chaos in the room intensified, a frenzy of voices clawing for attention like frantic hands grasping at shadows. Each person now found themselves captivated by the enveloping energy, but beneath that thrill lay a thin veil of fear so raw it felt almost alive. The robed man, losing his footing in this battle for souls, shot glances at the newcomer, whose very presence seemed to draw the room into a darker heart. Shadows flickered and stretched as if they too were wary of the figure's intentions, and the old man's voice wavered, blending urgency with desperation. "You can't what?" The figure interrupted smoothly, their voice a melodic blade. "Can't give them what they truly seek." With that, the jars lining the edges of the room pulsed with energy, swirling like tempestuous storms. A wave of unease washed over the crowd. The young man recalled the glimmering shadows inside the jars. Each one captured a sliver of essence: anguish, joy, fear. They were the fragments of lives lived and lost, gathered like trophies. "You will suffer for this," he cried out, his voice trembling, fighting against a tidal wave of uncertainty that threatened to sweep him away. "They'll consume you." But no one listened. The crowd's faces, illuminated by the dancing light of the jars, bore an unsettling mix of awe and hunger. They craved more than life, more than they were. And the offer before them cast doubt in their hearts, questioning if security was worth the stagnant chains of reality. The woman, whose yearning broke through the noise, stepped forward, drawn into a trance. "What's the price?" she whispered, eyes glistening with fervor. "I'll do it. I'll pay." The boldness of her declaration infected others, who murmured uncertainly. The manipulation was palpable in the air, thickening the tension swirling around them. As they clutched at hope, a distant rumble rolled through the building, breaking the spell ever so slightly. It sent a shiver down every spine, an echo of warning seeping through the walls. "Listen!" the young man cried, taking a step into the fray, desperation slicing through his words. "We're being deceived. This is not just about power, there's always a price." The shadows flickered once more, quivering against a draft that rushed through the open doorway. But was it a draft? Or was something lurking just beyond the threshold, waiting to pounce? The crowd turned, caught between the swelling darkness around them and the weight of the truth struggling to surface. "Stand with me!" he shouted, gripping the hem of uncertainty that tangled like ivy around their hearts. They had a choice. "We can fight this, we can resist." Yet, a voice, low and resonant, threaded through the stillness. "Why resist the call when you can embrace your fullest self?" The newcomer leaned closer, their breath a whisper of temptation, a siren's song luring them deeper into the abyss. The crowd swayed, uncertain, tantalized. Was it the promise of transformation or the specter of destruction that shimmered just out of reach? The air felt thick with tension, an impending storm waiting to break. As the doors creaked open wider, revealing that chilling shadow once more, hearts raced, uncertainty loomed heavy, and a question took hold: what lurked beyond the threshold? Would they step forward into darkness together, or would one brave soul stand a chance to lead them back to the light? As they peered into the darkness, shadows whispered stories yet untold, making the gathered hearts thump faster than ever. And in that moment, the room felt heavy with anticipation, a fateful decision about to unfold. When the shadow stepped across the threshold, its reveal would shatter everything they thought they knew. What truth would it bear? The atmosphere shifted, a jolt of energy crackling through the space like a live wire. The door creaked wider, revealing an impossibly tall figure cloaked in a tattered black shroud, the fabric shifting and undulating as if it was alive. Everyone held their breath, a shared pulse of fear and intrigue tightening around them. "Who dares enter our sanctuary?" The robed man stammered, attempting to regain control, but the command in his voice was melting under the weight of the looming presence. The newcomer stepped further into the light, revealing a face partially obscured by shadows, sharp, angular features twisted into a sinister smile. Chaos erupted again, whispers darting through the crowd like startled birds. What does it want? Is it friend or foe? With a spine-chilling calmness, the shadow spoke, voice low and hypnotic. I come not for your souls, but for your truths. It resonated through the room, embedding itself in their minds like a seed. What you seek has already slipped through your fingers. The jars you covet do not hold power, dear friends. They hold your very selves, the parts you hide. At this, the crowd jolted. The young man felt the truth behind those words slice into him, opening a wound he didn't realize was there. How much of his essence had he buried? Around him, the others shifted uneasily, eyes darting between the jars and the newcomer, as if the very air they breathed had become toxic. I can give you a glimpse behind the veil, the shadow continued, drawing closer with an unsettling grace. A glimpse at both the darkness you fear and the light you crave. Will you see the truth, or are your hearts too weak? The woman who had stepped forward earlier hesitated, her self-assured bravado slipping away under the weight of the revelation. What do you mean? What's behind the veil? With a soft chuckle that echoed oddly in the room, the figure gestured towards the jars. Those contain echoes of your past, a past riddled with forgotten memories, desires, and fears. Would you dare to relive the moments that haunt you? What's the catch? The young man challenged, still clinging to hope against the mounting despair. Nothing comes without a price. The shadow tilted its head, amusement flickering in its dark eyes. Ah, but what is more costly? The price you pay now, or the price of never knowing your truth? A ripple of unease raced through the assembled group. Hands went to faces, brows furrowed. The desire for knowledge clashed with their primal instincts of self-preservation. They were being drawn into something immense, something that threatened to consume them from the inside out. Don't listen. He shouted above the growing din, desperation bleeding into his tone. This is a trap. You'll sacrifice your very core. But like moths to a flame, they edged closer, curiosity igniting their senses. What lay hidden in those jars? What darkness and light had shaped their lives? The allure of revelation pulled at them, fiercely. A laugh rang out, deep and resonant. They stumble into the void willingly. Such sweet ignorance. As it spoke, the shadow's form seemed to expand, swallowing light and hope. Visibility dimmed as if night had crept in, blotting out the flickering flame inside them. And then the rumble returned, louder this time, a thundering beat from somewhere deep within. The walls trembled, dust showered down like confetti, filling the air with foreboding. Panic surged, yet so did an undercurrent of resolve. Agitated murmurs filled the room, splitting loyalties. Should they step back into safety or risk the darkness promised before them? The young man felt a surge of courage weave through him. Stand with me. He yelled. We can still choose to fight. As the aura thickened with tension, hearts pounded loud enough to drown out the rumble. Would they grasp at the shadows of their past or break the cycle of fear? The future loomed uncertain, a taut rope hanging over an abyss. As the ground trembled and the air crackled, one question rang clear. What would they uncover when they dared to face the truth in the jars? The shadows hissed. And the room waited, heartbeat quickening, poised at the brink of revelation. What awaited them in the depths, and who would they become when it was over? The air thickened as if reality itself were closing in, smothering every breath. The crowd hovered on the edge of panic. The tall figure loomed closer, its elongated shadow stretching across the floor, consuming the flickering lights. Dare you confront your own ghosts? It whispered, each word like a soft wind that sent shivers through the room. The energy pulsated, vibrating around them. Feelings of dread and curiosity battled within the crowd, an electric tension that had them teetering on the brink. What if, the woman who had spoken up earlier hesitated, her voice a shaky whisper, what if we don't like what we find? Ah, but isn't that the very essence of truth? The shadow replied, voice layered with irony. To love it or hate it, to embrace or reject it is still yours. The onlookers shivered in collective contemplation. The thought of unearthing personal fears sliced through the undulating tension like a knife. The young man clenched his fists. You're toying with us. Turning our truths into your entertainment. You want to dig into our memories, our failures. Anger surged in him, urgency electrifying his voice. But we're more than just our past mistakes. Yet the shadow only laughed, a deep, echoing sound that seemed to bounce off the walls, embedding in their minds. And there's the crux of it. Are you ready to divide your identity? To unearth the pieces you've locked away? Silence swept through the crowd as fear and doubt wormed their way into hearts, and a small voice broke through the air. What if we reject it? What if we can't handle what's inside those jars? Then you shall suffer forever in ignorance, replied the figure, a predatory glint in its eyes. The truth is a double-edged sword, it can liberate or imprison you. One by one, faces turned pale. A young woman tucked her hair behind her ear nervously while an older gentleman's hands trembled. Emotions flickered like fireflies in the dark, each one vying for room, battling to stay sane amid an encroaching storm of revelation, but the murmurs didn't die down. What do you see? What happens if we open them? Fear morphed into a swirling vortex of anticipation. The desire to know drove some forward, while others took hesitant steps back. Have the courage to confront your true selves, or risk withering away in this charade, the shadow challenged. You cannot hide from what you are. Each pulse of its voice echoed with personal stakes, as tinges of rage and sorrow coursed through the room. The young man stepped toward the jars. I won't let fear decide my fate. He felt his heart racing, a desperation gnawing at him. What haunted him? What darkness lurked in his own reflection? He reached out, hand trembling, fingers hovering above the nearest jar. Do it. A voice echoed, emboldened by fear and defiance. We can't shy away now. The moment hung, suspended between clarity and chaos. The young man hesitated, raw emotion coursing through him, greater than fear it was hope. Would he face the truth, or would it capture him instead? He pulled back, his heart pounding in syncopation. The clash between running from and clinging to truths intensified. Around him, others began to mimic his movement, narrowing the gap toward the jars, expressions drawn tight with anxiety and courage. As the air sparked with tension, the very walls seemed to inhale, waiting, straining for the moment the jars would open. What would they find? Shadows danced on the brink of memory, a flicker of redemption or a plunge into despair. But one thing lingered: who among them would break the cycle? As they stood poised on the precipice of revelation, a chilling realization washed over them. This was just the beginning. What horrors and wonders await? The shadow mused, as the ground beneath them shifted once more. The question lingered, echoing in the depths of their minds, a threat and a promise wrapped in mystery. What transformed truths would emerge when the first jar shattered? The silence was deafening. Each heartbeat seemed to sync with the restless whisper of the shadow. Time stretched, taunting them with the weight of choice. The jars loomed like sentinels, each holding secrets, fears, desires, pieces of themselves that were locked away, yearning for release. Time wasting, the shadow teased, its voice echoing through the room, growing sharper, more impatient. Are you mortals really afraid to confront your own stories? The young man clenched his jaw. He could feel the heat rising in him, the determination to break free from this cycle of fear. He took a step forward, tension coursing through him, squeezing his chest tight. The echo of every voice in the room melded into one, a collective pulse, born of anxiety, anticipation, and the faint glimmer of hope. Someone needs to go first. A voice trembled from the back. It was a trembling woman, her face pale but resolute. We can't let this thing intimidate us. Her plea hung in the air, a fragile thread weaving through the fabric of an escalating storm. Many eyes turned to her, the room suspended in that shared moment of courage and hesitation. But it was the young man's voice that broke the silence, then let us face it together. We can't let it win. A flicker of resolve spread, igniting a fire in the hearts of those gathered. One by one, they stepped forward. Each person paused as they reached for a jar they could see reflections of their past, the regrets, the pain, each inescapable memories wrapped in glass, taunting them. Suddenly, the man next to the young man took a deep breath and smashed one of the jars. It shattered loudly, shards flying in a sparkling spray. The room reacted with gasps and stifled cries. A cloud of mist surged forth from within the shattered glass, swirling like smoke before them. It coalesced into the form of a young girl, her face painted with sorrow and longing. "I am the burden of your choices," she whispered, her voice fragile. The innocence lost, the laughter buried under the weight of guilt. The crowd recoiled, fear washing over them anew. The girl turned her gaze to the young man, pleading. "Will you embrace me, or will you banish me back into the shadows?" The young man felt the weight of despair, it twisted around his heart, clenching it tightly. This was no mere specter, it was a piece of him from long ago, a reminder of his failures hanging like a noose. The room was alive with chaos, other jars smashing. Each release unveiled new apparitions, each tied to stories that resonated within the crowd. Some were filled with grief, while others ignited passion or remorse. "What are you waiting for?" The shadow roared, voice laced with urgency. "You think you can escape the truth forever? Each jar you break leads you deeper into who you are, or who you were meant to be." Caught in the tempest of choice, the young man felt the storm coalescing inside him, the desire to run, to hide from this resurrected trauma battled with an even greater need to confront it. His mind raced, he had to act. But could he stomach the pain that lay ahead? Would he risk shattering the fragile safety of ignorance? "Do it!" The crowd urged, voices rising in a chorus of expectation, trembling with fear and exhilaration. "Face it!" With every ounce of strength, the young man stepped toward the next jar. Reality seemed to twist and fold around him, an unfurling truth waiting to burst forth like a spring flower, impossibly bright but frightfully transient. He paused, hand poised. It felt like an eternity, the air charged with raw emotion. Could he do this? The figure of lost innocence, the haunting girl, remained before him, urging him silently forward. The choice loomed before him. Would he embrace his truth, or would he falter? The ground trembled beneath him with possibility, and the shadow loomed, waiting. What awaited him beyond that shattering glass? Would he find liberation or destruction? The moment hung in the balance, heavy with expectation as the jarring silence echoed along with the promise of revelation. And then the young man made his decision. The room held its breath, waiting for the crescendo of impending change. The young man's hand crashed down onto the jar. Glass splintered beneath his palm, an explosion of sound that sliced through the oppressive air. Time warped again, stretching every fractional second into an eternity. Clear shards scattered like stardust before him, glimmering ominously as the vapor rushed forth, expanding like a living entity desperate to escape. From the darkness emerged a figure, a man, his face lined with age and wisdom, yet hollowed by grief. The likeness struck the young man. It was his father. The apparition's eyes bore into him, a well of disappointment mixed with understanding, a mirror reflecting every moment of his past decisions. "Do you know what you've lost?" The figure rasped, his voice cracking like fragile glass. "You abandoned your family, your dreams. You chose fear over love." A visceral wave of guilt washed over the young man. Memories crashed into him with ferocity, vacations that were never taken, laughter dismissed, words left unspoken. He staggered backward, breath quickening, heart pounding. "No. I didn't mean for any of this to happen." He felt trapped, the walls of the room closing in, suffocating his resolve. But the crowd surged forward, eyes wide with horror and empathy. They were compelled to confront their emotions too. Another jar shattered in a distant corner, another figure emerging into the dim light. Moments cascaded through the air, unveiling faces from the past like a horrific carousel of lost love and neglected responsibility. Listen to him, a woman cried out, her own face slick with tears as she bore witness to a ghost from her past, a lover whose warmth she had cast aside for greed. The truth is our only escape, not the shadows. We can't turn away now. The shadow writhed in frustration, the essence of its being pulsating with anger. This isn't liberation. It's despair. You think confronting these phantoms will set you free? They will consume you whole. But the fear that had once paralyzed the young man morphed into a wild resolve. No. He shouted, his voice rising above the chaos. You are not our end. You are not the truth. As courage sparked in him, the shards from the broken jar glimmered harshly, refracting the light. He could feel others rallying beside him, transforming their fear into strength. One by one, they began to confront their own apparitions, shouting their truths into the tempest swirling around them. Enough. The shadow screamed, its form swirling violently. You think you can defy me? You'll only find darkness. And then, with reckless abandon, the young man stepped forward towards the swirling mist of his father. I love you. I'm sorry I didn't choose you. Desperation fueled the words, shoring up the courage to grapple with his failures. The response was instantaneous. The figure of his father flickered, transformation rippling through the air. A faint smile replaced the pain on his face, hope intermingled with sorrow. As the father began to dissolve into a million sparkling fragments, the young man felt the weight lift from his chest. But around him, chaos reigned. Every shattered jar released stories tearing at the seams of the very lives they had tried to forget. Sounds of anguish and heartache warped the atmosphere as the room became an orchestra of emotional turmoil. Would the collective resolve be enough to banish the shadow once and for all, or was it merely a prelude to greater despair? Desperately caught between liberation and destruction, the young man grasped the essence of hope just in time to hear the shadow hiss, more will come. Can you handle the weight of your own truths? The urgency crawled into every heartbeat. In that moment, the line between salvation and oblivion blurred, each revelation threatening to drag them deeper into darkness. But there was no turning back now. The cacophony of emotions threatened to swallow them whole, yet at the heart of it all was one potent question: what depths of suffering remained hidden, waiting to be unleashed? The chaos reached its peak, each shattered jar sprawling into shards of truth scattered across the stone floor. The room was filled with tormented echoes, every corner alive with remorse and resolution. The young man, trembling but fierce, held steadfast to the shores of courage as the final vestiges of fear defied him. The shadow hissed, belching clouds of dark energy, but the budding light of hope sparked a fire within the crowd. Face your fears. He screamed. Clenching his fists, he felt others rallying around him. One by one, they were breaking free from their cages, shaking off the chains of guilt and regret that had ensnared them for so long. People stepped forward, eyes glistening. A middle-aged woman wept as she confronted a childhood version of herself, a reminder of dreams that withered under the weight of expectation. I'm sorry I lost you. She cried, and the ghost gave a faint smile before dissolving into bright beams of light that warmed the hearts of those nearby. With every apparition faced, the figures shimmered, morphing from shadows of despair into shimmering sparkles of release, each flicker banishing the heavy pall of the shadow and freeing the essence once held captive. The air shifted, lighter. Do not let them go. The shadow howled, its presence growing frantic. You can't escape. You will pay the price. But the crowd, fueled by newfound camaraderie and the contagious strength born from vulnerability, ambled closer together. They were a united force, a mosaic of broken souls embracing their truths. The young man met the defiant eyes of the shadow. You think you control us? We are not your puppets. We choose to face our pasts. We break the cycle now. With this collective resolve, sparks ignited among the shattered jar shards. One by one, the figures released themselves from the weight of their sorrows. The room radiated a luminosity that darkened the shadow's form, causing it to shrink back, powerless. Gasps filled the space as friends grasped hands, reaffirming the bonds that should never have been severed. they advanced, a sea of accepting souls. "We see you!" they cried in unison, banding together under one radiating courage. "You will not conquer us." The Shadow's form quaked as it fragmented, flickers of chaos swirling into a vortex, sucked tight into the cracks of despair that had once defined them. But as they continued to reveal their hidden griefs, the grasp of the shadow weakened. With every joyful revelation, every painful embrace confronted, darkness slunk back into shadows it no longer ruled. In a climactic roar, the light engulfed the Shadow's presence, pulling it tighter until it dissipated into nothingness, unheard cries fading into the ether. The air cleared, leaving behind a presence of peace, warm and familiar, like the embrace of an old friend. The young man stood amidst the crowd, breaths heaving, hearts racing, a complex blend of exhaustion and elation. The final barrier had been broken. They were free from the grip of their fears, their choices, and for the first time, they shared a quiet understanding, a silent promise to seek healing together, moving forward hand in hand, no longer defined by lost time or darkness. Soft laughter erupted amongst them as they gathered their thoughts. Friends embraced, tears turned to smiles. They were not the same people who had entered that hall. Inside each one was newfound resilience, an unbreakable bond woven from shared pain and truth. Together, the young man whispered, voice carrying a weight of hope. Together, we embrace our truths, and we forge our futures. In that moment, they looked at one another, hearts aligned. Their journey had changed with every heartache faced, each truth uncovered gifting them a strength unwavering. Each of them had braved the storm and emerged into radiant light. As they gradually exited the hall, shadows melted away entirely, leaving a vibrant world ahead, filled with the sun's warm rays shining down. They had chosen defiance over despair, and love over loss. So when you find yourself at the brink of darkness and doubt, remember this moment. Empowered by hope, the bonds of truth and connection can unshackle even the tightest grips of shadows. This is your call to action. Now is the time for you to embrace your own truths. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss tales of discovery and hope like this one. Smash that like button to show your support. Every click counts. Flood the comments section with your thoughts and theories. We want to hear your voice in our community, and don't wait even one more second to share this with at least 5 friends who need to know the transformative power of truth. Every moment matters. Let us spread this message together.